A motion and support. I have a quick update since there was a change this morning, actually, to the agenda. So I removed the officer's compensation resolution from the agenda today because it was invalid. I'll explain the details and what happens next. I guess to summarize, I'd say you've been played. The Officers Compensation Commission is an independent board, not overseen by this Board of Commissioners. It is independent. I've heard this morning comments about this board giving itself a raise. I suspect partially because of misleading headlines. And words like disgusting, disrespectful, dishonest, disingenuous, embezzlement, etc. I hope the rest of these details are helpful in explaining the current situation. Like I said about a week ago, stay curious. The Officers Compensation Commission only has 45 days to determine the compensation of elected officials, including the prosecutor, the sheriff, the clerk, the treasurer, the water resources commissioner, the board of and the road commissioners. The first meeting of the Officers Compensation Commission this year occurred on March 11. The deadline for determining compensation was April 25. The final meeting and votes occurred on May 2. The chair of the Officers Compensation Commission is Larry Jackson. Larry Jackson was appointed by the prior Board of Commissioners in December of 22, right before the current board was seated. At that time, Larry Jackson was a known Democrat activist and Democrat candidate for office when he was appointed by the prior board. As chair of the Officers Compensation Commission, Larry Jackson is responsible for seeing that they do their duty on time and in accordance with the law. The Officers Compensation Commission has 7 members, which is required by law, not 3, as some people have said. The members of the board, the Compensation Commission, have staggered terms, and 4 of the members were appointed unanimously by this board in 2023. The process for appointments was open and available to anyone in the county, and the process that was implemented actually goes far above and beyond what is required in the law. The last year, only 4 eligible people applied for those 4 seats, and they were unanimously approved and appointed by the Talent and Recruitment and this board. Every single applicant was presented to the public and to this Board of Commissioners for review. On April 11, the Officers Compensation Commission met and voted to increase the pay for elected officials, including a 60% increase for the Board of Commissioners and a 39% increase for the road commissioners. There was no media fanfare in April, no articles, nothing. The determination was not even presented to the Board of Commissioners. On May 2, the chair of the Officers Compensation Commission, Larry Jackson, called another meeting, an invalid meeting, to increase the pay of the Water Resources Commissioner and the Treasurer. That was actually a meeting to increase the pay above what had already been determined on April 11. So it was a second increase. At that meeting, the Officers Compensation Commission voted for a $12,000 raise for the treasurer position and a $21,000 raise for the Water Resources Commissioner position. And just to be clear, any raises that we're talking about is for 2025 and 2026, not for right now. For an unknown reason, local media was in attendance at the May 2 meeting and interviewed Larry Jackson about the phantom 60% pay raise. Local media proceeded to write article after article claiming the Board of Commissioners was imminently ready to approve this 60% raise for themselves. This was not true. One media outlet even reported that the board had already voted to give itself a 60% raise. Talk about clickbait, fake news headlines. Instead of investigating the facts, Local news continue to write clickbait headlines to cause chaos. It's a great way to get paid. If they would have looked deeper, like I did, they would have realized the phantom 60% raise never actually existed. It should be noted that the news articles appeared just days before the recall election against Commissioner Lucy Ebel. It should also be noted that Larry Jackson is not only the chair of the Officers Compensation Commission, he's also the chair of the Ottawa County Democratic Party. Larry Jackson has a vested interest in seeing Republicans lose elections. Additionally, Larry Jackson is the individual who filed the recall against Commissioner Lucy Ebel. Was there collusion between the Democratic Party and the local media to influence the recall election? Was this election interference? Furthermore, we now have the opportunity to face two problems. First, the May 2 meeting called by Larry Jackson was outside the 45-day requirement outlined in the law for his commission to do its work. The meeting itself was invalid. Any determinations made at that meeting are invalid, whether or not he has sent them to the board. They cannot be voted on because the meeting itself was invalid. Second, the resolution that was signed and presented to this board by Larry Jackson is invalid also because it includes the phantom 60% raise. So let me explain that. The vote on April 11 that supposedly approved a 60% raise was 3-1 at that meeting. The law requires in MCL 45474 there be a minimum of 4 yes votes. So to be clear, Larry Jackson signed and submitted an invalid resolution in violation of MCL 45474, and the board will receive no raises in 25 or 2026. So to summarize everything I just said, the May 2 meeting was invalid. The law is clear. Larry Jackson shall not submit a recommendation based on votes taken outside the 45-day window. And the phantom 60% raise was actually never approved by the Compensation Commission. And there are no, at this point, there are no board raises whatsoever in 2025 and 2026. From my perspective, the prior Board of Commissioners could have heeded the warnings of former Treasurer Amanda Price, who contacted the prior Board of Commissioners to warn them against appointing Larry Jackson to this position. This is why I removed the resolution from the agenda. And if you have questions, please contact Larry Jackson. With that, unless there's any other discussion or questions, we will move to a vote to approve the agenda. Commissioner Zylstra.
Yeah, I just want to go through that last part real quick. I just want to 45474 Section 2 reads, a majority of the members of the